Is dinner ready yet?
My wife's voice rings my ears as I'm preparing dinner. Just a second, I'm preparing it now. My wife seems to be relaxing in the living room watching TV.
Hetty.
Coming right up. I turned off the gas stove and made some tea. It's the same old scene, but I'm beginning to wonder about this life.
My name is Jack, married for 27 years, 50 years old.
My wife is 4 years older than me and used to be my boss at work. As my boss, it was natural for my wife to tell me to do stuff, even at home. My wife wanted me to be a stay-at-home dad, which was unusual at the time. We had a son and a daughter. Our son got a job at an IT company, and our daughter got a job at a food company. Once they were both out of the house, and we were off the hook from raising our children, I decided I wanted to start something new. My daughter suggested I take a cooking class, but I didn't feel comfortable asking my wife to pay for it. So I started part-time as a clerk at a supermarket. I hadn't worked in a while, so everything was different from the old days, but I enjoyed trying new things. My son had always been interested in computers, and he taught me how to operate one. Thanks to my son, I was able to fulfill the requirement of computer literacy on job postings, so I started working part-time. I felt like I was accepted as a human being when I received money that I earned on my own. With that, I started to go to cooking classes. I had been living in a closed-off space, but I was able to make friends for once. It was fun to improve my cooking, but it was also fun for me to be around people of all ages.
How about the bath?
I was cleaning up after dinner when my wife shouted from the living room, "It's ready." Without saying a word, she got up and headed to the bathroom. I was the one who always prepared the bath and placed her change of clothes. It's not that it's a pain, but it's sad when she treats everything like it comes naturally. Even when I'm sick, she doesn't do anything for me.
She would even ask me, "What are you gonna do about dinner? Where's my change of clothes?"
At those times, my children always took care of me and comforted my wife, but nothing made my wife care for me. After many years of this kind of life, when I started working part-time, my thoughts on this changed a little bit. When I told my wife that I wanted to take a cooking class, she gave me permission under one condition, that I should not neglect the housework. I had no problem with that, but I don't think it's fair to say that my cooking skills won't change just because I went to a cooking class once. If I could get that good at cooking just by going to a cooking class once, I'd have no business. Then I realized that my wife doesn't like the idea of me starting something new. I kind of realized that she wants to look down on me as I stay as an at-home dad who can't do anything. This is when I began to wonder if I could be alongside my wife for the remainder of my life, who I barely have a conversation with. The children have left our house, and it's just me and my wife in this space. I feel strangely cramped, even though the number of people in the house has decreased.
Ping!
As I'm standing in the kitchen, my wife calls me. I haven't heard her call my name in decades. I look up and she points to a corner of the room.
It's not clean enough. If you keep playing around and neglecting your chores, why don't you just get out of here?
It's not new for my wife to say that I could leave. I wasn't even working when we were raising our child, so I never thought about leaving. But now it's different. It was my first time arguing back. There's a vacuum cleaner right there. If it bothers you, why don't you clean it?
Then my wife suddenly started to get angry. You're a stay-at-home dad. How dare you talk to the head of the family? I can't believe you.
With that, she left the living room. I sigh, and after a while, I hear the front door open, so I guess she went out somewhere. Stuff like stay-at-home dad and head of the family, it's all so old-fashioned when you think about it. I guess she didn't expect me to argue with her. After a while, my wife came home. She suddenly pushed a piece of paper into my hand.
You can just fill this out and leave if you want. You know?
I took the divorce papers from my wife, and it looks like she had already filled it out. Just one rebuttal and we're divorced. But I thought that if my wife says so, I would be willing to. However, I tried to calm down. Let me think about it for a while. I took the divorce papers and went to the bedroom. I don't know how long I've been thinking about it, but before I know it, it's already evening. I was thinking about going to bed at this point.
Hey, what's wrong? Where's dinner?
I hear my wife's voice. What do you mean? You're asking for dinner from the person you gave divorce papers to? She opens the bedroom door to check on me. I sigh. Maybe you won't be having meals if we get a divorce.
And she says, well, maybe it's not good for me to be without you then. Now that I'm letting you live here, can you hurry up and get dinner ready?
There are some words that discomforted me, but if I ignore this, she'll keep on asking me if the food is ready yet, so I heated up a leftover dish in the microwave and placed it in front of my wife. The next day my wife comes home in a strangely happy mood. When I took her bag and her suit jacket, I smelled something unfamiliar. Was it men's perfume? But I didn't ask about it. If this was cheating, I was going to gather evidence and get a divorce. I had been suspicious before, but this was the first time I thought of probing into my wife's affairs. I quickly found evidence of the affair in the form of emails and photos. A month later, things took a turn. When I came home from a cooking class, the house phone was ringing. When I answered, it was the police, saying that my wife had been in an accident and had been taken to the hospital. She was supposed to be at work today, but the place where she said she had an accident was in a completely different direction. I suspected fraud, but I rushed to the hospital where I was told to go. Just to be safe, I called my son and daughter and asked them to come as well. When I got to the hospital room, I checked, and sure enough, there was my wife. According to the police, the man in the passenger seat was dead. Apparently it wasn't some kind of fraud. But when the police told me that there was a man in the car with her, I didn't care about my wife anymore.
Mom was working, right? How could she be in a place like that? And with a man?
I nodded at my daughter's words. The kids immediately understood that my wife was cheating on me. Either way, I can't do anything about it because my wife hadn't regained consciousness. There's a chance she won't regain consciousness, and even if she does, they say she'll be paralyzed from the waist down. Other than that, they won't know until she wakes up. My wife woke up 3 days later. When I got a call and went to the hospital, I found my in-laws in the hospital room. When my wife was rushed to the hospital, I had called my in-laws, but I didn't want to wait for them to come, because they would take a long time to get to the hospital, so I hadn't met them. They arrived after we left. They said that while my wife was unconscious, my parents-in-law stayed with her. As soon as she saw my wife, my mother-in-law started yelling, "Jack, where have you been?"
My mother-in-law started yelling, Jack, where have you been?
My mother-in-law has not been happy with me since I got married. We live far, so we hardly see each other, but whenever we see each other she complains about me. Well, this time I expected her to say something like this, because I'm a husband who left my unconscious wife. My father-in-law followed my mother-in-law's lead and blamed me. I couldn't help but think, I agree, if a wife was in such a state, a husband would be there for her. But I've given up that role. As my in-laws' eyes widened, my wife opened her mouth.
I heard I'm going to be in the hospital for a while, so I need you to get me a change of clothes and some towels. You can come see me at a certain time every day, my wife said to me as if it was a given.
I was thinking of where to start, but she continued.
If you're my husband, you should be devoted to me for the rest of your life.
Then my mother-in-law interrupted from the side.
I'm sorry to hear that she's paralyzed. From now on, Jack will have to nurse her.
My wife nodded her head.
Yes, you're my husband. It's only natural, she said.
When I heard those words, I said with a straight face, "What are you talking about?" "I won't do that because you're a stranger."
What?
My wife and in-laws looked at me. "I'm not your husband anymore. I won't do it." "You've got some nerve being so brazen about being caught cheating on your husband in an accident, even though you told me it was work. You actually took a paid trip to a hot spring with your affair partner. Unbelievable." I wasn't sure how much my in-laws knew, but now that I explained the situation, they must have realized.
Yes, you must be so proud of yourself to have such a popular wife.
It was my mother-in-law who had obviously missed the point. At that moment, the door to the hospital room opened.
That's the worst thing you could say, Grandpa and Grandma, my daughter said, with my son behind her.
Apparently they had heard everything. So now all the actors are here, I'll start telling them the whole story. You started having an affair 3 years ago? I heard that the other party was a company executive. When you visited his house to celebrate his promotion, you got to know him. How dare you make a move on an executive? I said, my voice rising in anger.
The man who was riding with me is dead.
The man who was riding with my wife is dead. The man's wife and the police asked me what happened, and as I kept in touch with them, I learned more specific information. I noticed my wife's face clearly changed. It's impossible for you to be in an accident with a man with whom you were having an affair, and nothing was found out. I've been aware of it for a long time, so I have all the evidence I need. Well, I'm going to talk to my lawyer about what I'm going to do now, so I'll leave you to it. The wife, who had clearly lost her color, suddenly started to panic.
Wait a minute, what do you mean, a lawyer?
I mean exactly what it is. I'm going to demand a full compensation for the affair and moral harassment.
Well, how am I gonna live?
My wife only worries about herself all the time. I quit worrying about her. I've been treated like a housekeeper by my wife, who only demands for dinner, bath, and tea. Then she had the accident during her affair, and I didn't care for her anymore. Fortunately, I got the divorce papers with my wife's column filled in. So I went to the city office and filed the divorce papers without hesitation. I am no longer your husband, and I will not take care of you or devote myself to you in any way from now on.
I'm glad he decided to divorce her, my son said.
That was the end of the conversation. As I was leaving the hospital room with my pale wife, my mother-in-law hurried and blocked away.
How can we possibly approve of a divorce like that? You're gonna take care of her for the rest of her life. Do you understand?
I don't understand with a straight face.
Well, what is she gonna do? She can't even walk. What about her bath? What about using the toilet? Who's gonna take care of her? You're only capable of taking care of her, so don't talk nonsense and just do it.
I kept a straight face. Why don't you take care of everything? I said, she seems displeased. So I said, please quit forcing me to do things I don't want to do. And I continued, I hope you too will do your best to take care of your daughter. Then my father-in-law, who acted like he was out of the conversation, looked at me with shifty eyes. Well, the rest was none of my business. I will be leaving that house. I left the hospital room with my children. I've rarely been able to argue, but today I was able to say what I wanted to say. I went home and prepared to move out with a clear mind.
You should move in with me.
I followed my daughter's suggestion and moved in with her. I returned to my part-time job and started taking cooking classes again. Everywhere I went, people told me, Jack, you look happier than before. I used to be a housekeeper who didn't get paid, so it was natural for me to look a little gloomy. Now I have a broader perspective, have more friends, and enjoy my days. As I declared, I have demanded my ex-wife to pay me alimony for cheating and moral harassment, and I have also been given a fair share of her property. Incidentally, the wife of the affair partner also found out about it, so his wife demanded alimony as well. My ex-wife, who became paralyzed on the lower half of her body, had a chance to be rehired by the company as a physically challenged person. However, she had an affair with a board member, and when it was revealed to others that she was partly the cause of his death, it became too difficult for her to stay at the company.
Jack, please come back.
My ex-wife says over the phone. I didn't ask her anything, but she started talking.
My father and mother have been pushing each other to take care of me. And finally, my mother left yesterday. My family is over.
She said this in a weak voice. What, you think I'm going back to that place? I said, I married you, but I lost the desire to devote myself to you for the rest of my life a long time ago. You just had to say dinner, bath, tea. You had an easy life. If you had at least said thank you, it would have been different. You thought it was natural to have it done. You may think you can't do anything now because of your physical disability, but you've always been incapable of doing anything yourself. My ex-wife is out of words on the other side of the call. And I'm not happy being called by name for the first time in decades. I received my share of the property and alimony in full, so I have no more use for you. If you persist in contacting me in the future, I will consult the police. She may have really thought I'd come back, but I'm already independent. My part-time salary wasn't enough, so I was looking for some kind of a new job. I learned that my cooking class teacher was looking for a partner. She is old and doesn't know how to use a computer, so she uses paper to recruit students for her cooking class. She also handwrites her student management chart. I quickly raised my hand to be the teacher's partner. I started to help her with recruiting students and making postings on the internet. This was all thanks to my son, who taught me how to use the computer. Then he called me. Mom called the other day, but I don't trust her one little bit. So I told her I won't help her or lend her money. Also, I have no intention of inviting her to my wedding. My son, who is all grown up, is getting married the month after next. He visits me once in a while to ask me to teach him how to cook. Did you come again? My daughter says to him with a smirk. We've always been like this. There is no wife at family gatherings. Rather, she was just there to tell me what to do and make me work. Since she's gone, I've been happy with the quality of life I've been able to lead for myself.